here I am doing favourite thing, scraping, and I am carving out the belly cutaways that I like to do so much on these Telecaster style guitars. And it's really nice to do. I've just sharpened this up with my burnishing tool. I think bought from Stu Mac, one of the, not few exactly, but one of the tools that I would happily buy from them, or have happily bought from them, because they're good quality and they last a good long time. So what I'm now doing is I'm just using this freshly sharpened scraper to get in and finish the hollow out, or the carve out of this cutaway, which is a really nice thing. It's a bit of rough stuff here because I was kind of leaving this original stuff in place, which is left behind from the pew end construction. So I'm not really, didn't really have a plan to cover that up or disappear it. So sort of working around it, it just kind of complicating the edge of my carve zone for a minute. I'm sort of trying to mark where I want to be. Just sort of occasionally need to remind myself. So I'm trying to just make a sort of visible edge along this line. It does make a difference if you can see a sort of start point. It's quite hard to do, especially if you've got a bit of a shaggy bit of timber here. It's all that lovely pitch pine, and it smells good too. Smells good. Okay, so we're not far off here, which makes this lovely, really deep cutaway, and this will round over the edge here too. And then what we'll do is we'll do a Strat style forearm curve here, which we'll do in sort of in line with the angle here, so it'll be at its deepest at this point. Physical hard work thing to get this cut out. Probably could do with 2 clamps to do that. So this is, I won't stay long on the video, but this is a fun evening's work. I've done quite a few bits of routing and stuff today, so I'm ready to glue this tonight. And then I need to make a template for the electrics cover there, and I need to prepare another pitch pine telly body. I've got 2, one of which I'm going to use for JT, and I think the second one might be better than the first one. The first one might have needed a bit too much repairing. The idea is to just get the contours picked out and then work in and around them. So you kind of end up with a clear line. It doesn't have to be absolutely precise, but it is nice when it is smooth and progressive. You can sort of get a look at it from above. Oh, sorry, crouching down and eyeballing it. Okay, so there's the rounded off part, and I want to come up from there. Let's just have another look at this. That comes to there, joins there. Okay, so there's my sort of marker line, and I'm just going to work all the way up to there, and then I'll probably do some scraping as well once I've taken, you know, bulk of the material off. This is quite hard work. The hands sometimes. So it's all by eye, really. And this edge needs a bit of work too on the sander, but yeah, it's all, you know, all this stuff is done by eye, which I really like, including the rounding off, which will sand off. And it's not like a router that puts a perfect edge on it or anything like that. I like the humanness of it, to be honest. Eventually you kind of run out of reach. You just have to, you know, more blood. You have to kind of work it up as far as you can to get close to this line, but you never get exactly to it because this thing won't stop there. I want to start to use the scraper from there downwards. And as long as you've got mostly a curve around this area, you'll be alright. Just about see where you run out of room with the handle, which is about the tightest angle you can get. You can get a bit more out of it turning it upside down. And keeping a close eye that we don't sort of don't want to put huge scratches over here. There's one compression there from a nail outside, screw head outside on the workbench, which has dented this, and if necessary, you know, I'll take a millimetre off here with the plane, but kind of try not to take it down in thickness anymore. So you can see we've got mostly the curve sort of half done, 2/3 done, and you can see that it sort of comes up to meet this in a nice sort of thin bit here. So it has that lovely curve. Now things where I look at it, for example, and I can see that it's still not quite smooth, it's not doing the line I want, then I can sort of get hold of it here and do a little bit of manual adjustment, and I can just keep an eye on where it comes to on the underside. But that's pretty cool. So we can put this under clamp again. You can see this is getting close to being in the fun zone. See, I've got to plane this flat. I've got to sand all of this out and continue to carve here, do these edges. These are pretty much done. The through body holes are already done. Just need to sink some holes for the ferrules, and then just working on the edge on the bobbin sander, just carefully go around it, make it nice and smooth. And then maybe a bit later tonight I'll drill some holes, drop some magnets in there, and we'll get the and some resin in some washers here, so we get a nice magnetic cover, and then we'll work it flat. I think I'll leave this. I quite like this hint of the old pew in there and all that. I've left this unusually thick down here, partly because I've got long travel pots, you know, the full length CTS pots, but also because this is pitch pine. It's not exactly a hardwood. It's harder than pine by a regular pine by a long shot. But I wouldn't say it was, you know, a really tough hardwood. Hence this dent here you can see. But it's so I don't want to run the risk of some point down the line ending up with a crack here because the wood's too thin. So I've cut it, you know, carefully, and you know we have loads of room with the long shaft pots. So here's the fun part again. You get the scraper out and you start to smooth down all these things, including the edge bevel, and you can go across or with, whichever way you want to do, whichever way it best works is what you're trying to do. And of course you can get now further into this than you can with the file. Excuse me, cold. So now this is across the grain now, it doesn't like that, so I'm going to sort of try and come down mostly with the grain. There is a sort of surface layer still on this pitch pine, which might actually be just surface resin, or it might just be some residue. Obviously it's going to come out like this. We still have quite a bit of sanding, but that's fine. I don't mind losing half a mil in sanding, and it will also help to get rid of that. It also means that the colour of this is likely to kind of become closer to begin with to this lighter colour once we've cleaned this up. Now these grains are quite pronounced, so you have to, on the edge for example, you have to kind of go very much over it and with it rather than against it, but when you're down here you can go against it. It's probably easier going against it than it is to try and run up to a fixed stop line here, although you know it's doable if you're careful. The wood sort of tells you what it wants really, which is nice. Now that's now running against the grain, so to come back this way it seems happier. Don't have a very good access down here. The great thing about this curve is you can then sort of, as long as you manage to sharpen it all the way along, you can basically turn it to the tightest part of the curve you can and still use the edge there, which means you can do finer and finer lines. So for example here I can now really carefully follow this pencil line with this thin edge, basically helps me to get rid of this colour, but I think we're going to have to do most of that colour removal or colour balancing with overall sanding, but it's not a bad start. Smooth the grain out here. Again, sanding will kind of help that a lot shortly, but when you've got a really sharp scraper, which this currently now isn't that sharp, but when you have a really sharp scraper, you can get a nicer finish almost than sanding, or as nice, if not nicer. So you can see we've now got the sort of forearm curve, and to be honest, that's sort of all you need. It's not massively progressive. It's not like a flat angle like on some strats, or even some foreign strats like Korean made. They're all foreign, you know what I mean. Non-Fender, I mean. So it's not the same as those lines. It's a more organic curve. It's probably logarithmic if we're being technical. Ooh. Now this quite an important bit of the carve here is this little feel here, and I want to get it just right, and there's a little snagged bit in here which I've got to try and not hollow out exactly, but I've got to blend it in, and involves sort of blending everything around it as well. It should be alright. I think we've got enough space to do it, and blend in down here. I'm just putting a bit of a dig in there before I get to that counter. It's where I've cut the grain against the grain, and it's sort of dug up a bit, dug in and dug up. But now there's the going against the grain that way, so to smooth this out we have to come down here with the grain carefully. And it not to go against the grain in this side, which is really weird. It sort of stops there. I can feel a bit of unevenness here, so I want this to iron out, and for that I want some sort of smooth movement if I can. Pretend I'm at the Indy 500 and I'm carving the banking track. Or Goodwood. Was it Goodwood? Goodwood was like that as well. Was it Goodwood? The original? I don't know. Now, obviously I'm kind of feeling my way with thin gauze, and I want all of this to blend as well as possible, even when that's going against the grain there. And if anything, we just want that feel of a scallop in there. So if anything, we're just kind of cutting in to this hollow wherever possible. See those little bits of sawdust? Curls of sawdust flipping out. So in all of that, get in there and smooth it out by digging out these little concave bits. It's starting to feel really nice. As you can see, it's reasonably aero, but you'll be impressed with this. I cut this with my full-size saw in the vise off this block here. This is a sort of blank dummy. I cut that one off, which was perfect. And this one's a bit wider, thicker at one end, but it's still usable. I can just thingy that down fairly quick, easily, playing it down. So there's the belly cutaway, or the belly carve. which again takes quite a nice bit of weight off there. Again, lots of sanding I think to bring this down to this colour and finish. So although I do like that, that's got a nice sort of smoky look to it, but you can't really have the forearm curve without cutting into the colour there. So we will have to sand it down. There is a tiny little fix area in here where, sorry, I don't know why you can see that, in there where the route went through because of the original sort of holes in the back where the church pew sides fitted in. I think these were actually supports of some sort, and they sat on these things. I think the pew seat did. Anyway, so as I say, the fun part really at this point, what I love doing, and I'll go off camera in a minute now, is just, you know, lots of little carvings and shavings to your heart's content. And what's nice is that once you've sort of got rid of all the bulk stuff, you can kind of finesse it down then, and you can stop pushing hard, and you know, it can start to be really concentrate on the fine sort of lines of the curves you've got going. Like I say, it's all about getting, if you can, getting concave shape. That's what's different in my guitars from a typical Strat, is that when I look down here, I want this to feel like a scalloped shape. To me, that has to obviously be rounded off with the sandpaper, but when you have that scallop thing, it really does allow this blokes with a big kind of rib cagey man boobs or whatever it is that gets in the way, but it does really help to accommodate that, but it also, to me, gives it this beautiful line. I know that's what JT, one of my customers, likes, is this sort of Strat, the sort of place where the belly carve meets the forearm carve. There's something quite beautiful about that. So that's what this is about, all about achieving. And I say, you know, just kind of picking away at it. So I'm going to get off because this is just going to be more of this, and I'll take probably, you know, a few more hours to do this, finessing this stuff, and just using very thin little nibbles to dig a nice organic scallop. I know scallops are organic anyway, but he knows what it means. Olive oil. Oh yeah, I love it. I wish the whole thing was really like that. There's not enough curves on here, but there's a few. Alright, see you later. Good evening, welcome to Reloved Guitars. Been a while since I've been on camera in the shed, and things are kind of a bit all over the place at the moment. Apart from being extremely untidy, as you can see over there and everywhere, we've got a bit of a spray booth thing going on. I've got 4 guitars in the offing at the moment. For example, one of them is this. This is a what's it? Spalted beech, oak, and pitch pine combination of things. This is Paul's guitar, which is going to have a bit of a red sunburst around the edge, natural finish. And there's a couple of Telecasters down here too. Just quickly show you while I'm here. One's mine, but one is JT's. That's JT's, which is going to have an interesting mix of tunematic bridge with Duesenberg vibrato on it. So it's going to have a neck angle, a bit like a Gibson, more like a Gibson. Anyway, so those are on the go, and they're all waiting to be kind of sprayed and then finished. So hence the portable arrangement over there, which is, that one is mine. Well, it's for sale, but it's one that's in the going. Anyway, so there's all of that on the go, and what I've also got running down there is a temporary, well, I don't know what it is exactly. It's supposed to be a dehumidifier, but I don't really know how it's working. So it's on, and I don't know which button is to dehumidify and which button is to heat or something. I don't know. So I've got it on well, one setting or the other, and currently it's not really doing anything to the humidity levels. So this was just given to me today by a friend of Claire's, so hopefully it'll do something, but if not, then I've got another one coming tomorrow, a smaller unit, but the one I had previously was very good at taking the humidity down. This would have gone down from 90% now down to sort of 70 within half an hour of running. This is, well, we'll leave this on and see if anything happens. If nothing happens, I'm going to switch the button and change the setting. Sorry, it's going to be a sort of white noise in the background. Anyway, to get back to business, along with making some guitars, which is always great fun, I've also got a couple to set up right now, which I need to get on and do. Heck, I need to turn this off so you don't get shot by noise. So what we have here is Gail's Tanglewood Tomcat with a K, and this is a pretty looking thing with a tree of life built into the fingerboard, so it's beautiful. Well, a rose bushy thing, I suppose they call it different things, but the rose of life, but it's a very handsome looking thing. Oh, that's not so good. Wah, wah, wah. Pickups around, perished. Okay, we'll leave that there for a minute. Just touched that and that fell off, so maybe somebody's really glued it or something. They maybe over tightened it. That's the other, yeah, they have. Anyway, so what we've got on this guitar, we've got 3 aside gold stuff. It's made in Korea, which maybe gives it a nicer quality feel. It's somebody said it's a Patrick Eggle copy. I haven't seen the original that it's copied from. It's a nice looking thing. Set neck, quite an elegant small shape. It's got definitely got a rattly jack socket which needs putting right. The switch is kind of a bit diagonal, that needs sort of straightening up. It's got a very nice sort of Wilkinson tremolo unit on it, which works really well. It's actually it works so that perfectly horizontally it gives the correct range of, sorry you probably can't see that from there, correct range of pitch bend back and back. So it's a really nice unit. The only downside about this unit is it involves this sort of intonation. So that's going to have to, that makes a pain for adjusting, because you basically have to slack these off, slack the string off, slack these off, move it, try it, guesstimate, and try again. Am I going to poke myself in the eye? Do you know what? Sorry, I've just seen something. This is 22. It's a 22. Oh, I've been searching for that damn thing. Right, I'm going to put it there with the other ones. I just did one by hand because I couldn't find the tool. Anyway, I had a 22 forced and a bit, and I couldn't find it. Anyway, so for guitars that I'm making for this Telecaster, I need a 22 bit to go through here to drop in the little Telecaster style cup for the jack plug, and I've got a 41mm one, and I've got a 35 and a 25, and I thought I had a 22, but I couldn't find it, and it's just caught my eye. It's magneted to the side of the pillar drill, of course, where I keep everything. Anyway, back to this. So what we've got in this guitar is we've got a really nice big solid block. The Wilkinson comes with a chunky tremolo block, which is good, and we've got nice sort of hollowed out or dimples to sort of set the buttons in a little bit. Actually, they're not that much, but they kind of look nice in the overall carve of the thing. This guitar at the moment, the only complaints that Gail has about the guitar is that she found that for her the pickups seemed a bit boomy in her description, and she did a bit of adjusting, so she lowered them down, which seemed to improve things on her amp. So she's considering upgrading the pickups at a later date, and that's probably a good idea. I mean, it's never a bad idea if you want to invest in a guitar. She loves the rest of the guitar, so it's one of those things where, well, if you like it that much, why not invest in better quality pickups. Now, I don't think these are that bad. Having listened to them, they didn't seem particularly boomy or what's the word? Particularly muddy or anything. Oh gosh, look, there's no power. Oh, for goodness sake! I tell you what, why don't I get this zoom? It's got zoom written on it. Yes, M cube. Well, M cube, not zoom. M cube, cube, Roland cube, M micro cube, M cube. Right, let's just plug this in here, and we'll have some power. So we have noise. Let's get the reverb off. Let's get it onto normal, clean, middle of everything. Tone works. Volume works. Interesting, there's not much difference tonally between the neck pickup and the neck and middle on, which I suppose is maybe one of the limitations of this. If the pickups are very, very similar, so I don't know, sometimes they are the identical thing, just producing different tones because they're in different positions, but you'd kind of hope that there was enough tonal difference to make a third, middle position sound like something. It does, but it's kind of, you don't really hear it so much on the bass string. But you do want as much difference between the neck and the bridge as possible, really, to give, again, as much of a tonal difference when you put the two on. So you want to get the most out of each of the positions. That's my kind of, so that's what I want for my money's worth. But just listening to that, they don't sound at all wrong. The positions aren't that far. I mean, 3 to 4 millimeters around about. Neck is about 4, bridge is about 3. So that's kind of where, actually it's a bit down. Probably what you'd want to do, if you're feeling like it was suffering from slight thickness, or it was the bass end of things was kind of distorting your amp. And again, a lot depends on your amp settings, but you might want to take down the bass a little bit more than the treble end of it, and if anything, give yourself a little bit more. Oh, sorry, it's the other way around. Yeah, good. What am I talking about? It is the correct way around. Sorry, it's a left-handed guitar, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, so you'd want a little bit less on the bass and a little bit more on the treble, which is kind of what Gail had there. So I was looking at it as a right-hander. It's kind of where you'd want it. Yeah. Again, it's one of those much of a muchness. People often say, how high should they be? And I saw somebody on a comment on Facebook saying that somebody had recommended that string height should, string to pickup height should be anything from 2 to 2.4 millimeters, and I'm just thinking to myself, that's hokum, bunkum, hocus pocus, whatever. 2.4 millimeters. Why not 2.5? Why not 2.667 recurring? When you start getting to figures like that, you wouldn't tell the difference between 2 and 2.4, let alone 2.4 and 2.5. So something that precise is just a bit nonsensical. Okay, so what are we going to do with this thing? Well, one of the things I said I might try, if she wanted a bit more tonal range, or a bit more treble to play with, to make the tone a bit more, start out with a bit more treble, might be to put a 0.1 instead of the 0.22 capacitor that's probably in there. Maybe put a lower capacitor in, something like a 0.1, which I've got here, so we could try that out and see how that sounds, and we can always revert back to a 0.22 if it doesn't sound any good. So so that we might do that. We're going to fix this rattly thing. We're going to fix this so it points in the right direction. It's kind of diagonal at the moment, and we're also going to lower the action a bit, and that's a tricky part here because we may be out of adjustment. It might be a sort of, looking at these saddles, they're kind of at their limits, and the only thing we may have left to us is to go down a little bit on the overall plate by using, but we may be out of adjustment on these as well. So that's going to be an interesting thing. We've got, actually it's broken in 2 places here, this pickup ring. It's snapped front and back, so this has been off and broken off. So we might see if we've got a replacement for one of these, but it's not too bad as it stands, but it is definitely broken. The other thing we're going to do is, I think we'll replace this plastic nut with a Tusq adjustable one, which is probably somewhere, hopefully somewhere sensible. And actually, I think it's here. Yeah, I made one up the other day with a resin base. Oh no, that's a. No, I'm losing my marbles. That one's a milliput base. Oh, I got a spare one then. Because somewhere else I've got one with a resin base. I can't tell you where it's gone now. That is pretty hopeless, isn't it? Now that thing, we're 86. Well, it is lowering the thing. Anyway, okay. Look, we've got a milliput base if we need to use it on here, so we'll keep that out ready. The resin one is kicking around here somewhere in a box. Right here, hold on. There's a whole pile of these little fellas. It's untidy, but everything is in its place. Okay, let's dig it out. Here it is. Well, there's a few little bits here. Let's try digging some of these out. Yeah, so I've been doing experiments and making these things out of resin. I got one that successfully worked, but a lot of the time it's quite difficult to separate the moulded piece out from the mould itself. So over there, out the way again. Okay, so yeah, we got one here that's got a bit of blue tack on it, no plasticine on it, but that's a good solid resin base. So I've got two of these, one with milliput and one with resin, which either of which we can use. I've got two more here that we could use. They're the base parts, but they need sanding down, so we could do a little bit of work on those. There's a couple here that are still kind of locked together. Oh no, that one's come apart. Ooh. Hey, hang on, has this worked out after all? Didn't seem to work at the time, but actually things have improved as it's dried out. I've got several of them working, so I can keep these, put these away for the purpose of making new ones in future. They're quite useful. They're sort of mass production tools here. A bunch of these little imprint things that I can then put into moulds. So keep those separate. And then what we've got, oh wait, hang on, we've got a few that go with that. Put those in too. So these are our sort of, I don't know what you call the negative part, the positive part of the mould that presses in to make an impression. Anyway, that's what these are. And then I get out of the deal, I get a bunch of these sort of formed things with impressions in the top, which take the Tusq nut. So what I've got is a bunch of options here that I can play with. Anyway, even if it goes with the milliput version, that makes a really good base. It's worked perfectly well on several guitars. And the nice thing about the milliput is you can get it almost exactly the right size. The downside is that it's very white, whereas this stuff, actually when you look at it, is much more cream coloured and it fits the nut a lot better. So we'll go with we'll try and go with one of these. This is actually creamier than that one, funnily enough. So we take that out and we put this one in here, and we'll see that it should fit. Well, it will fit when I've sanded down this a little bit, which we could probably do. This is a little bit of a distraction, but I just want to do a quick try and see if we can get it to a workable. I haven't really sanded with this resin stuff yet, so I'm not quite sure how it behaves under when it's worked on. So that's quite good. And then as we get further down, what we find is that this piece should fit in quite nicely at some point. The purpose of the base unit is to stop anything moving sideways. More than anything else, that's its role. And that one might not be quite so good. This one's possibly better. Give them all a little go. The ones I'm now sanding down now were made from a sort of copy of the nut base, so it may be that isn't accurate enough to work. The one I've got over there made directly in conjunction with this piece. Well, that's not too bad actually. That would happily sit in there, and we can pretty much take this, flatten this out to the, take it down to the correct width and flatten it down to match. So we just need to kind of know which side we're leaving it with and then stick to it. So this is it's been a bit of a project that I've been doing for the last several guitars worth, because I discovered that these adjustable nuts really are a great all-round solution for the three-a-side type of guitar. Really stabilizes the tuning, but it also saves the process of, or gets rid of the process of having to file down the nut slots endlessly. Okay, so with a little bit of sanding you can get flush with the front edge of there. Probably needs just a tiny bit more sanding down that side. Actually not so bad. And then we can do the same at the back, and then we're sort of basically left with a pretty flush bass unit that will do us a good job. Of course you can stop as it gets level with the Tusq material. The Tusq is good stuff. It's just not, if ever on my videos I've given the impression I don't like it, it isn't, or how it works, it's that it's actually not quite as easy to cut in my experiences as bone. So when it comes to making those sort of precise adjustments for the nut slots, I've usually reverted to bone, because I find I can get those precise heights, first fret action heights, much easier with bone than I can with Tusq, and Tusq risks too many false starts in my experience. So this is almost done. I'm just going to level this out a bit now, because it's a little bit oversized on one side. Once we get it down, what I'm just trying out really here is that we've got resin, which is a bit harder and a bit firmer, I suppose, than the milliput, although it does both work. I'd be more comfortable if I could get the resin to, or get the molds to work and use resin whenever possible. It's not only a bit harder, but it's also the right colour for what I want to do with this. Okay, so we're sort of down to size here for this guitar, and then a bit of dust and grime caught under there. Now you actually haven't got a very hugely substantial casing here, but you don't need much. All you need is be a little bit tidied up. And then that should fit quite well. And then what you've got is usually got one correct way round. You've then got a little footing that your nut can sit in and operate out, and we can glue that bit to the wood on the bottom. So I think, looking at that, that's just about right. Now it'll always sit up off the base a little bit, because that's the whole point of it. So we expect that to happen, so it would replace that, and then this would just sit above the surface. So we've got a couple of options there. There's that one, or we could try another one. Sorry, I have to do this now. We're going down. Humidity is going down, but it's not much. So after running this for a while, I might revert to switching the button on the other way and see what happens there. Not so bad. That's not quite that right way round. Try that way. Like I say, these are made from sort of dummies, so they may not be quite right. Full stop. Yeah, that one doesn't quite want to play. It's like the mould was not quite right. But yeah, maybe it feels like it shrunk ever so slightly. So there's another one. Again, that one tight as well. Maybe that's what happens. Maybe it does shrink a little bit. Okay, well look, we've got this one, which is perfectly done, and we'd better get this green. What's that stuff? You know, Play-Doh? No, plasticine equivalent, generic plasticine. Okay, so we'll use this one since we're here, and that's still going to be too wide. Now we can Dremel that off at the end if we want, or we can just wear it flush now if we're in the mood. Get as close as we can, and we put a little corner on it, just tidy it up. Likewise here. Now flush this end too. Sorry, this is kind of a bit off the normal beaten path for the setup. Okay, so the front edge is flush and the back edge is sticking out a little bit. Now with the back edge, you could sand down this back edge in a little bit of a curve, unless you wanted to make it flush, but if you didn't like it being flush, you can just round it off, and then we have a bit more of a sort of softer curved part on it, and then that will stand nicely. That's sort of softened off. Again, it depends on the gap you've got, so I'm going to push these off to one side for a minute because they're not going to get a look in, nor is that one. I'm going to sneeze. So let me just look at the side of here. Yeah, we've got a limitation. Excuse me. A limitation only imposed by the truss rod cover here for thickness. This is hard to see. When things are black, you don't get to see a lot. Alright, so that does have to thin down a fair bit. So let's take it down anyway while we're at it. I'll take this out for a minute. Just double check this is the right way round. It can be either way now. That's flat there. Now let's do the front this way. Let's go off there. Well, since I last did a video, I think I, like everyone else in the universe, has been to see Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie, which was in some ways good, in some ways interesting. For someone who's been a Queen fan as long as me, there were some factual stroke continuity errors, fact errors of truth that lots of people have pointed out, but you know, when you kind of look at the script and you understand why they did it, but it's a bit, I suppose, dumbed down is a way of describing it, when you have to add, or you have to manipulate the plot in a way that you think is going to hold interest more than the truth or more than reality is, and I found that a little bit of something of a shame, because hold on a sec, because in a way reality was good enough. You know, it's like it didn't need embellishment for me anyway. But so for example, the part of the story where they kind of build you up to feeling like Queen were practically estranged from each other prior to Live Aid, and then sort of that's wonderful, hey, let's get back together and play for the first time in years sort of deal that you got at Live Aid. And in fact, I think I'd been watching the very same day, I've been watching a concert from the same year, 2 months before Live Aid. You know, I think it was a world tour, and they were in Japan, and they played, you know, you could see they were in, you know, on top form as they were at Live Aid, but it was the same era. And it was only about 2 months before Live Aid, so you know it's incorrect to show them as having been sort of so distanced from each other. But anyway, apart from that, the other thing I personally thought was, I thought that Rami Malek's portrayal of Freddie was very good, very interesting, very rich, and I thought it was kind of wanted to see more of his character, and I thought it was a bad decision to show or to simulate a whole 20 minutes of Live Aid, entire performance, however long it was. You know, when they could have used that 20 minutes to I guess let Rami Malek develop the character of Freddie and show his relationship with, I've forgotten his name, the guy, his last partner, before he died. So it just seemed a shame, because you know you can go and find Live Aid and watch it a million times online. There's no shortage of versions of it to watch, and no synthesized version will ever be as good as the real thing. Anyway, I would rather if they'd use that time spent give Rami Malek more acting time. Anyway, so these are 9s, these strings. So we're going to have a quick look at what the action settings are at the moment, and then we're going to make some adjustments or decisions about adjustments. Right, okay, so we are on 2.5 and 2.2. 2.5, 2.2, 2.5, 2.2. Should be able to take a millimetre off each of those. Now the question is how do we do it? Because we're on the stops on this, so it's going to have to be done via the by lowering these posts. Now that's going to present another interesting challenge, because they may not be able to be lowered. If that's the case, then we are a bit stuck with a permanent action that we can't do anything about, which is a bit weird. Right, so let me try and find an ordinary kind of messed up on all of these screwdriver heads. I'm not very good at storing them in any special place, and then I misplace them, obviously, and then I can only find the bleeding Phillips ones, which I don't want. It's always the way, isn't it? Okay, let's drag you down here, something like that. Okay, I'm just going to take these off because we have to do a bit of adjustment behind here anyway. But yeah, nice Wilkinson full weight block on here. I don't know, it's funny, isn't it, when you get used to a certain kind of guitar. To me, I never liked that much plastic on the back of a guitar. I don't know, it doesn't really make any difference to anything, does it? It's just purely aesthetic. But, and I know it allows you to get away without having a scratch plate on the front, or a pick guard bearing scratch plate, but it just doesn't seem right. So in all of this period of time, we've got the humidity from 89, 90 down to 83 at the moment. So I presume that what we're experiencing is the dehumidifier working slowly but surely. Okay. Alright, so in here we have the rattly jack plug, we have the switch gone around the wrong way, and we've got our pickups through to full-size pots, which is good, and a little green 2.2 capacitor by the looks of things. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten up the jack plug for that I'm going to use two things. Oh, hey, now wait, no, new thing. Now with this new thing, would this be a good one for tightening up jack sockets? Let's try it. Okay, so Ratley, I've got the StuMac tool, which I turn in, put it in, and turn one way. It holds it tight. While I may be able to use. No, I can't use that. So I'll use this to turn the thing the other way. I hope I'll use this. And if I can't, I'll have to revert to some pliers. That's a problem with having it sort of sunk. It's a very nice idea, but makes this kind of adjustment very iffy. There's quite a lot of loose doing upness going on here. Now, I really can't get a better bite on this than that. So I might just use some pliers. Sorry, you don't get a very good. You can see now. The elbow is always good at holding guitars on the bench when you have to do things like this. So this isn't a very good position to hold something in. Really difficult. Oh, that's interesting. Ha! Look at this. This is actually broken. Can you believe it? Look at that. Look. Wow. That's something else. And that's made this a bit impossible too. Did you see that? The nut is actually fallen apart into lots of pieces. And now I can't actually turn this to get this damn thing out. So that's the first thing we've got to do. Replace that soft metal. It has given up the ghost. Let's push that in there. Hold on to this and turn this to remove. Well, well, well. Who would have thought that? That's never happened to me before. Look at that. There's quite a few things snapped on this guitar. Pickup ring is one of them. Jack socket is the other. Well, well, well. Or jack thingy. Now, we may well have another nut, but we won't have a gold one. Oh, well, not immediately to hand anyway. I don't think so. Haven't got one in there. Well, that's brassy looking ones. Are they gold? Yeah, kind of. Not quite as blingy as the other one, but okay. So the first thing that's happening is now you've got. Okay, let's do something here. So now we're in a position where there's no point keeping this on for its own sake. If we're going to make this easier to do up, we might as well remove this and do it outside the body and then screw this back in. Well, well, well. Like I say, never before. Okay. So what's happening at this point is, as you're using things, you're moving the wires around, which is what I always prefer to try and avoid. Okay, that's a small. Is that too small? Let's get this off for a minute and just see if it works on here. Too small. Okay, well, I'm afraid we're going to have to just go with whatever fits, because it's going to be one of those. That's too big. Failing that, I'm going to have to replace it with something that I've got an exact matching fit for. What a pain that is. Depends on what make of socket this is. They all have different sizes sometimes. Well, some do. And that's okay. That's fixed. Good. marginally smaller. Okay, so we got this on again. So I suspect that was already cracked, which is why it was loose. Everything has a reason. Okay, so now hold this, and now I can do this up by hand. Not a lot of bite on this, unfortunately, at the best of times. Okay, up on there. So when all else fails, take the thing off and do it again, outside of the body. Much easier. Okay. That's what having loads of spares is good for. But that is that's a sort of it's like an alloy, that nut. Or, oh, I just realised I didn't put the washer on. Not that it really makes any difference unless it's a crush washer, which would be a much better idea. Or a split washer, keeping the thing under tension. That would be a fabulous idea, but it isn't. But I'll put this washer back in anyway while we're here. Come along. Obviously nothing of this is really easy to hold, so when you're trying to do something up really tight, it's the adjustable spanner versus your skin, really. Yeah, it's funny though, I don't understand, I never quite understand why. This is a load bearing. A flat washer really only exists to spread load. If you're talking about having a washer to hold this thing tight under tension, you want a split washer, really. And if you're trying to hold this tight to some timber, like inside the guitar, you want one of those kind of pointy toothed washers that dig into the ground when you tighten them up and they stop things moving. But, oh well. Okay, so we sort of get there eventually. Now threadlock in the past I've put a bit of what sort of stuff, threadlock on these things, but they can, it's very delicate, they can end up being making it impossible to undo later in life, and you end up having to sort of rip them off and break them off, so it's not always a great idea. Okay, this one is difficult, it's in the wrong place, so we can undo it like this, turn it around like that, and then do it up again. It'd be great if there was a tool for that. It probably is. You could probably tap it around with these little slots in here. That's probably all right. There's probably a tool that does just right for that. I end up. What do I end up doing? Well, that's usually in a different type of guitar, but I end up holding it and turning it. Just wondering if any of these fabulous tools will come in handy. Oh, it will, without touching anything else, without turning the thing around. See, the thing is desperately trying to turn at the same time. That's always your enemy, is getting it to stay put. So you have to persuade that thing to move. And then I did invent this little tool with a flat block in here to go in the back here and possibly stop this from moving around any further. And then, with a bit of luck, oh yeah, what a great little device this is. Woohoo! A little hooked thing for doing this up, and it avoids touching anywhere on the body. Yes, thank you. That was a Martin gift, I think. I'm trying to remember who gave it to me now. Right, so that's that done. Getting there. Now, this is a vexed question. There are those people who insist on, if you're going to make any alterations on this, you can't alter it with the strings under tension. So as a nod to those people, I will take it off tension. But before I do that, I'm going to pull that way, so I'll put a little bit of block in there just for now. I've got a little wedge up here that I keep. Might not be right for this, but no, not quite big enough. It is if I go in this way. It's not a really good example. If I do this, then that's tilted too far. I need it to stay in that position with exactly that width of something. Find a little wedge or something. Right, there's tons of bits of wood everywhere. You know, let's use. Oh, you. A couple of bits of this. Now, fold it in half. Fit. More. Spare timber. Okay, that will probably do. Okay, so if I now were to slack off these strings, I should stay pretty much in the same place. And once I've slacked them off a bit, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the action on this post here, so let's see if we've got any adjustment. If we don't have any downward adjustment, then the danger is we've reached all the possible downward action adjustment on this unit, which I think will be an absolute pain in the what's it. Oh no, we've got plenty of room. Thank goodness for that. So down we go. So about a similar amount each side. Okay. Let's just have a look. Now the reason I slack those off is because some people get very irritated about the whole idea of making adjustments to these posts while the strings are under tension. Now I kind of dispute that, because there's no logical argument I've ever heard, seen or heard, that suggests credibly why turning these central posts while this is fixed in place is any more damaging or destructive than the knife edges of these being cranked up against these posts and living under constant tension of both strings and springs, and then being waggled up and down with the trem arm. Now there's no reason why that is turning these under the same sorts of tensions, or perhaps even less because you're not doing this, why turning these is inherently more destructive than using this. I don't buy it, and I never have, unfortunately. But anyway, it's one of those things that it's, you know, sometimes you end up doing things because it's easier than getting a load of flack on video and having people pish and moan a lot. Okay, so having done this, I'm now going to throw out this little bit of blocking wood in the back. Now I've obviously got to put this back into tune, for which I will hopefully use this clip-on tuner as my aid. Let's take a start note so I know which range of things. Oh Christ, I can't, can I? Oh. So the aim is to get it back into tune. A combination of using the little bolt-on clip-on tuner as well as a reference note so I know where I am. Of course with the floating trem it's going to move all the time, so you can sort of chase it and then it will eventually even out as it reaches equilibrium. Do for now. So that's returned to a straight line, but it's closer to the deck now, which is fine, which is what we wanted. Hello. And we can revisit the action down here. This is without touching the saddles so far. This is just working off because they're already pretty much on their stops. It had to go straight for the posts. If there'd been loads of adjustment room in the saddles, we could have done the action adjustment with just the saddles, but it wasn't possible. So now we have 1.5 inch, 1.25, 1, barely under 1. That's pretty good. Sort of where I'd want it. Now, next little game will be, I've got a plectrum, not to hand, be to just test the notes on here. Well, actually, I'm jumping around a bit. I wanted to get the action broadly right. Then I wanted to knock off this nut basically and replace it with the adjustable nut, and then we set the action with that. But at the same time, while I'm at it, we can also adjust or check the neck relief, which is easy enough to do. We can press down first and the last frets. Now there's a little bit of action there. Obviously if you want an exact visual reference you can do it by putting the guitar on its side and we'll get a little bit more of an accurate picture, but you can still get a good sense of it. That's actually just about right. I would suggest it is about 0.3. Bit. It's not bad. It's better on the treble side than on the bass side, but we'll do a little bit of light fret leveling, which is what we set out to do. This thing's still rotated a little bit. It's so annoying. Get back where you belong. In the vertical, horizontal, vertical. There we go. Yeah, so it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. So we will get the we'll do a little bit of fret leveling on that to make it perfect. Now again, what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm just going to slacken the strings off again, and this is a graphite looking nut on the end of here, which is, you know, I was tempted, and I mentioned this to Gail, you know, it's one of those, if it isn't broke, maybe don't fix it. Having said that, the slots do need a little bit of work, only because they're quite deep, and she reported a little bit of tuning instability. So I know that these Tusq nuts work really well, and it just doesn't make sense to scrimp on it, you know. Put one of these in and enjoy the benefits of stable tuning, I say. So we are going to remove it now, in case somebody in the future decides to comment and go, "How unprofessional, you chopped that nut off without even examining whether it was, or without cutting the slice." Somebody criticised me the other day for. Now, I can promise you, if you have a look at a guitar and it's on the bench in front of you, you know which nuts are glued in, set in, and will or will not pose a problem to get off. I know already about this nut. Is on this side it's not lacquered in, on this side it's smoothly lacquered in. There is, by the way, for those people who suggested it, there is probably no real good reason for running a knife down there. Okay, you can't get a knife into there. All it'll do is splinter off some rosewood, more than likely. Now, if you want to get precise about things, this has been put in, glued in, and nicely levelled off, so it's done a good job of it. Neither end is actually lacquered over, so we can afford to take it off with the same kind of provisos as any nut. Okay, is that it will often pull up a little bit of glue with it and possibly some rosewood on the bottom, so you may have to do a bit of flattening or whatever. So there you go, stuck down with super glue, you'll get rosewood on the bottom, and you can see the extent of the glue going up the side there. It's not the end of the world, simply because on this with this Tusq nut I've obviously got room for adjustment. So the first thing we can do is, with the Tusq nut, is just put it in, and you can see how much higher that is than needs to be. Okay, so that's obviously going to come down. We're going to need to drop that down by, I would say, 2 mils, or at least 1.5 mils off the bottom there. So I can, for example, mark that off with my eyeball. I'm going to say, take this much and relook at it, and that will be a job for the sandpapery flat board. Also, you know, we could sand this down. The question is really, we can afford to go a little lower, obviously, because we've got loads of height in here, but what I don't want to do is start changing the shape of this. But there are some little details in here that we need to take care of. So for example, when you're replacing the nut and you pulled one off, you'll find there is glue down the face of this. You can see it crunching, so you can get your very sharp blade and just gently scrape it off, and that gives us a sort of a flat. I shouldn't really be doing it, I should be doing it over here where I can actually get to it, but that will give us as flat a face as possible to butt the new nut up to. Now the question of how uneven this is, there are a number of things you could do. You could put a very small amount of resin in here and sit the thing on top of it, and it will bed itself into that, and you can, you know, leave it at that. That's one way of doing it. Or you could just kind of let the glue fill the difference, because it's mostly seated on there pretty tidily. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Is that all sitting nicely there? Yes, yes, yes. There's a bit of that stuff, plasticine, sitting in here, which I want to get out first. Get out. So yeah, this is the first all lacquer base that I've used on one of these nuts. So this came about because Gibson quite smartly invented a system with an adjustable nut on their Les Pauls, on their Gibson Les Pauls, and it was a sort of adjustable zero fret affair. And what happened was, apparently the first users discovered that I'll sort of draw it for you because it sort of explains. Let me see if I can see about this. Let me spin you around a minute with this magic eye, leg, foot, ear. Can you see everything? Yay! So what they did was fingerboard, fret. They kind of created a base, kind of went in there like that. Okay, and then that was your headstock. They created a base like that, and then they put on top of it a unit that kind of, yes, looked like, let's call it that, right? That went over there like that, down there like that. Yeah? Well, it wasn't quite like that, it was more like that. Look at the amazing miracle of whiteboardiness. Hey, there it was, right? And then there was an adjuster screws, grub screws in there like that, and in the back they had slots to position the strings. So this was a kind of little sticky up bit, you get what I'm saying. And they had the slots in the back to position the strings, and then the strings came through there and over the what was effectively a 0 fret, but it was all part of this unit here that you could then adjust up and down. Absolutely brilliant idea, and it finally would cure the problems that so many Gibsons had with their crap plastic nuts. But the problem with this unit is apparently that the choice of brass was a silly decision, because one thing you know about a 0 fret, which this effectively was, because the strings sit on this bar all the time, the edge of the nut, or the 0 fret. What you know about the 0 fret is that it wears incredibly quickly because the fret is constantly pressing on it. And so, as a result, they failed. You know, they'd get notchy very quickly. So what Tusq did was they saw a gap in the market. I think what Gibson did is they made one out of titanium, which again probably end up costing you, more money to replace. I don't know. I would like to have thought that Gibson would have just sent it out complimentary to their poor harassed customers. Anyway, whatever they did, they replaced it with a titanium one that you could get. But Tusq, in the meantime, obviously saw, or maybe in cahoots with Gibson, I don't know, but there was clearly a gap in the market, or an opening, or an opportunity to create a replacement that would sort of fit into that arrangement. So what they made was this thing here, right, and that sat in there and did that job. It sat inside Gibson's bass and did the same job. Now when I came across those, I realised that they would be a perfect fitting to put on any guitar I was either building or setting up, because all I had to do was make an appropriate bass. In fact, probably could have got away without even making a bass. The reality is it probably would have worked. I have used them just sitting kind of with the little grub screws hitting the hard rosewood underneath, or the mahogany. So they work, they'll work just as is. So anyway, I decided to make some little bass units and set about seeing just how hard that could be. The first ones I made out of bone, which were I might have made one out of bone, and it worked. It was just a little bit of a faff to make. Basically involves cutting a trench down the middle of a piece of a bone blank. There we go, getting closer. Oh, wrong side of the thing, for starters. That's the way round. Get it the right way. No, hang on, it's this way round. Yes, what are you talking about? Okay, so we need to basically to be low enough so that it's ready to raise. We want to start with needing to raise the grub screws. There has to be some lowering we can do. So we want this kind of start lower than higher, if you sort of get what I mean. So I haven't used this resin on the sandpaper before, so this is a little bit of a first. So I'm trying to be as cautious as I can so I don't overcook it. Oh yeah, I am. You see, it's cutting quicker than I am used to. Just trying to square this up a bit. close, close, close. Right. So now what we're looking for is we're looking to see if the string on here under tension, let's say, let's just see how far over. That still needs to be a little down on that. We want to start with the strings just touching that first fret to allow us to stem them up on the stalks, grub screws a little bit. So it's just a matter of gently continuing to work this down a little bit more, making sure that it's flat in all directions. Okay. And the way I like to do that is to move my body instead of the piece. It tends to give me the more accurate result. So you can see we're actually getting quite thin now. There's hardly any material underneath, but it's just enough to form that little firm footing. And again, we can quickly test this out by dropping the string on and putting it under tension. Of course that will flip sideways, we know that. But that, I would say that's coming, well, that's almost perfect. It's going to open up a little bit when we put all the strings on, because the neck will relieve a little bit. Let's bring you back into all these different positions this thing can go. It's quite remarkable. Anyway, so put these under tension, hold them in place, and what I'm finding is they're still sitting above the thing, so we need a bit more material off here. Come on. So I guess you get to a point where if there's no more material available, if we cut through the bottom of this, and what we need is a lower slot here, which might be worth working down with a file of some sort. But we'll see if we can do it with this first. Again, watching carefully for levelness. We definitely want it level. So there's hardly any material in the end that forms this base, but it is fuzzy bits on it. It's going to be just enough. There you go. That's pretty much touching the string. I'm going to live with that, I think. So what we'll do is just get all that. It's building up a bit of dust here, but don't worry about that. We'll clean all that up. So we'll just put everything in its place for a minute, and we'll sort of pull the thing back into central position. Now it's obviously not fixed. I just realised something. I have to adjust the top of these because it's a left-handed nut, isn't it? Wow! Now that's something I didn't count on. Because I normally, when I use a bone nut, I normally cut it from scratch. But that'll be okay. I'll just take this down. Okay. So let's tighten these up a minute. A little bit more work than usual, but it's a fun. I'm going to try and pull it sideways. So what I'm looking for right now is just checking where things sit. Okay, this is going to give me, I've got to obviously take this down in size, and that's kind of where it needs to be. That's good. It's all about right. Okay, good. So I'm happy with where that's sitting to begin with. We'll obviously glue that into place. Sorry, you can't see. We'll glue that into place, but what I have to do is when we get this back up to pitch, I'm going to need to do a little bit of working on each of these slots to get them to the right size. But the nice thing is, providing they're all to get to the same height, then I can just lift the whole nut up. And to do that, now we have to get the things up. What the hell was that? Oh, it's one of those. I need that. So I've been concentrating on spraying for so long, I don't know where everything else is. Right, missing one of those, missing one of those. Okay, I don't know where that went. Is that there? Nope, that's a square one. Okay, so the one I need has gone for a walk, so I'll use this one instead. Right, sorry about that. Dangling a bit sideways on this. Okay, So let's get the tuner working again for a minute and just get roughly to tune. Roughly. Okay, so those are almost right. Okay, now we're going to take what we're going to do, we're going to drop this off and we're going to just cut this one down. This is the, let's get the right order of things, 16, 12, 16, 24, 32, 42, 53. Right, start with the 32 and I'm just going to make sure this is the right width to run smoothly. I want it just touching the top, so it's a kind of a visual thing now. Follow the angle as closely as possible. I really do need to take these files and change them around because they need, I need to release the so far as yet unused side of them. Okay, it's not quite on the deck, so I'm going to go until I get them all on the deck, and I'm going to try and keep the slot open as much as possible with that file there. And we're nearly there. So this file is quite useful because it opens the slot up so that you don't get any binding of the string. Almost there. Tiny bit more. Almost, so nearly there. Close enough. So these are slightly slanted, these strings, or these slots, so we can basically, I need to just be careful to follow the angle of the slant as closely as possible. See, I don't like cutting Tusq, it doesn't want to behave. Not like the way bone, not how like bone does. This is basically just polishing and flattening it out more than anything else, which is not ideal. I'm just going to take out this rub screw while I'm at it, because I don't want it in the way of the file. It's temporary. Okay, that's close enough. Yeah, not my favourite material to cut is old Tusq. For some reason it doesn't behave the way as dependably as bone does. Bone has a nice dusty quality to it, which does what I need it to do. This stuff tends to sort of polish out and seem to go all shiny too quickly for my liking. It's chalky. Nearly there, a bit more. See, if I start with them all touching the first fret before we do any action adjustments, then what I know is that we've set them all according to, or to follow the radius of the guitar, which isn't great in this, but it just means we know we're following that radius from the outset, and then we're just lifting the whole lot up in that radius pattern when we adjust it upwards with the grub screws. Okay, that's still a little bit high. Okay, I think we're good on that. Now this is already touching pretty much, nearly. Now this one's a little different in that we're going outwards. That's nearly touching, so I think I would consider that pretty much on the mark. This one is also touching, so that's okay. This is in a bigger slot really, which gives it a bit of movement. And this one's, has this one got movement? Okay. So, what we want, put that back in, what we want to be able to do, what's gone wrong with this now? It's got a bit of plastic caught in it. Damnation. What we don't want. Get the right sized adjuster for it. Where's it gone? I've got a whole bunch of these turned up. Oh no, I could be here forever looking for the right one now. Thankfully. Okay, so there's a bit of gunge. I'm going to take these off and clean those holes out. Like normally it wouldn't be this amount of kerfuffle because it's left-handed, so I've had to mess around with this. You can't just turn the nut around because the string spread would be going in the wrong way, so it has to be adjusted from here. Right, so let me just kick out this little bit of ragged stuff that was getting caught in that hole, because that wasn't good. Thank you. Oh, what the hell is wrong with me? Right. Something going wrong in this hole all of a sudden. I have a feeling that a bit of plastic got pulled into the threads in here. Got ground into the threads, which isn't good. Better. Still a bit stiff, like it has got some gunge caught in there. Okay, so I'm going to give it a little kick up. Same with this side. And pipe it in there again. Now we're standing on our little feet. Okay, I'm not very entertaining this, sorry, but you know me and not editing. Right, just for a second now, what I'm going to just do is do these up again. Right, tuner. Right, that's fine a minute. That's making that noise because that slot is too wide for a minute. I'm just checking out the different heights here. Okay. Right, so now take this off, take this off. Now we're going to just cut a very tiny slot in here, if I can keep it in one place. It's not sharp enough. Get in there. Thank you. And then this one, same thing, finer. Must adjust these and put the new blades or the new sharp edges into action. Waste of sharp blades otherwise. Okay. And then finally, so what I'm doing with this is, because it's a left-handed one, I'm just cutting a new little gripping slot at the end, if I can get in there, at the end of this, at the bottom of this, a larger slot, so that it'll just grip in here and provide a footing for the string. And that is still not correct. Let's go down this way. Let's tune this up. Useless tuner this thing is. I really do hate it. Okay, so now I would look at this and I would raise up whatever I need to raise up for my final action, which isn't this one, it's this one. That's the idea, and we'll put a little bit of an extra tilt up on that one, a little bit of a tilt up on that one. Okay, so that's my action. Good. Sorry, a bit fiddly that one, because of various things. Let's keep that out, we'll need that. Put those away, put those away. So what I'll do is, once I've stuck this in place, I'm going to clean up these slots a little bit, and I may even just slightly reshape things so it looks a bit tidier. Let's have a look. Where are we going? Yeah, because it's tilting a little bit, so we need to glue that bottom bit in. Okay, let's do that first, and then we can set about doing the fret leveler. Okay. Now, one of the things I think I would have liked to have done is given myself a little bit of a footing space, because this is standing up. No, it should be fine. Okay, a little bit of glue. A little bit. What are we doing for? We're hovering at sort of 80% humidity, which is not fantastic. It's not a huge difference. And I'm putting a bit more glue on this side because I need to just get in and fill that slight unevenness a little bit, so I'll give it a good grip. Check where we are. Stick that on there for a minute. Press down. Right, now when you put your nut in and glue it in, do the strings up. If you're going to tension them from the middle outwards so that they don't pull the nut one way or another. So that they're pressing down there first and then move outwards. Okay, and that should stay nicely in place. Good. Now we use this. Does this thing need a new battery? That's the question. And if it, oh god, I haven't got one of those. It's straining with feebleness. It is the most feeble tuner. Sorry. Now we just want to get it to roughly to pitch, so it's not going too far out of tune. I don't need it concert pitch for the next thing. Just so the neck is loaded. As though we were playing. Okay, that'll do. Off, you horrible little thing. Okay, so next part, let's get these out of the way for now. Bits of broken things over there, a little collection of broken things. So the next thing I want to do is mark off the frets. I'm going to do this in bits. Normally I probably do this with the strings right off, but in this case I wanted to get it to tune roughly first, so I'm kind of doing it in stages. The frets have either been leveled before or they're worn this way. They look a little bit like they've had some work on them in the past, so wouldn't be surprised. So here we go. First bit. Push these out of the way, go in between. It doesn't really matter if I draw on the strings at this point because they're going to be binned anyway. They're sacrificial strings. So it's just a bit of a slow process. Much easier with the strings all off, but once I got it back vaguely into tune, I couldn't be bothered tuning it again. I had somebody ask me on YouTube today what this tool was that I used for fret leveling. It looks like a truss rod. Well, the answer to that is yes, it is a truss rod, and that's really almost all there is to it. There's no magic in the sense. It is a truss rod, but the magic is in learning how to use it well and learning to read what it tells you about the condition of the frets. And that's not something that comes in one practice. You've got to use it a little bit for a while, so that you get a feel for how it works and what you're doing and what it's telling you. Which is why I always recommend people start with practice on something that isn't important to them, like I don't know, an old Squire or Encore or something. You know, you pick up in a eBay or in a Gumtree or Craigslist or whatever, but start with something that you don't care much about. Now the idea about this is we're going to use the truss rod as a curved fret leveling tool, and so what the aim is to bend our truss rod to match the curve in the neck. And it's got self-adhesive 400 grit sandpaper on the underside. Now I've used many different ones in over the last few years, and I kind of stick with one or two that I know how they work, and that's not something I can tell you. There isn't a one that you can buy that works perfectly well, so my recommendation is you try a few. I don't know, what did somebody suggest? Somebody suggested, what did they suggest? What did they suggest when it came to doing this? There was a thing about the measurement. What did he say? Oh, hang on, I'm just thinking through a comment. Somebody said when you take the truss, when you take the string off, the neck shape will change. Well, yes, it will slightly. So he said, why wouldn't you? That's what he said. He said, why wouldn't you take the reading with that string off? That was a good point. That was a really good point. So that makes it even more as is. Let's see if how much that's changed, if any. Practically none. There you go. I didn't think it would, but it was a good idea. Anyway, so what we've got is we've got our truss rod matched to the curve of the neck, and away I go, letting the gravity do the work on these frets. Now I noticed that the bass strings, the frets on this side of the neck, were a bit buzzier than anywhere else. It seemed cleaner on the treble side. So I'm going to assume, or no, I'm going to let it, this tool now will either confirm or challenge that. So I'm expecting to see some uneven frets on this side of the neck. So let's see what I've got. It's kind of difficult for you to see in detail, but uneven, relatively uneven, low, a spot of low ones, high one there. So it's kind of confirming. Now what's nice about this method is you should be able to just put the string back in place, take off the spacer, so we've got a little low cluster here which are clunking a little bit off that one there. So a little bit more to do. So yeah, that's the nice thing about this method, is that you can try it, you can do a bit of leveling, and then you can come back and test the playability of the string and let it see if you've cured it. And I suppose the best part is that you really, the aim is to stop when you've freed up the notes at the action you've chosen. Now this is, as always, this is a challengingly low action that I've chosen, and I'm just feeling the problems are mostly up here, so I'm kind of concentrating up here, and I can see a definite cluster of high ones right here, with about 3 low ones before it, and it's the low ones that make the high one high, effectively. A lot better than it was. I'm going to stop there for a minute and move on to the next track and see how that looks. Get a feel for that. Oh yeah, I'm just recalibrating in the same track as I did the first time, just to make sure that the truss rod hasn't changed shape. And I use the same calibration effectively for the first and the second tracks that I do. In this case it's the A and the E. Typically on a right-handed guitar I'm starting out with the high E and the B. The same principle applies. So just in reflection, the first fret leveling along that low E track that we just did confirmed what I picked up in testing or trying out these notes earlier on, which is that there was a cluster of some sort of high frets up here, and it's showing up again, this one up here, 2 or 3 of them, and we had some buzzing around these notes on the bass side. So what I'm kind of expecting is to find this a little bit of a struggle. Not bad. Not bad. A little bit of needing a bit of fret leveling on this side, but progressively less as we come across this way. That's the expectation. Now, if that isn't what happens, then it will be challenging what I read originally about the sounds of the frets when I was playing the notes. So I think, having done it a lot of times, it's confirming what the playing at the beginning told me. And what I'm kind of expecting to see now is that from here onwards, from the D up to the sort of top, the B and the E, I'm sort of expecting to find less extreme cutting kannup on the frets. I'm kind of expecting to see more or less a uniform amount of shine happening. That's, yeah, kind of what that one's the highest one of the lot, but we're kind of taking it down a bit. But again, the main thing is can I get it playing for the action we've chosen, and that is a very low playing action, so it's pretty good. Now I'm kind of thinking we're home and dry at this point, which is nice. Let's just double check my spacing. and again recalibrating now each time I go to a new track. Now that one is now, the neck has curved a little bit more, so I'm now going to add a bit of curvature into the tool, and it's very delicate, so I've already put too much in, so I'm going to slack it off a little bit. So the amount of adjustment is absolutely tiny. That's it, spot on. And that's really where the experience comes in, and that's what you can only really get with, you know, 10, 15 of these jobs under your belt. But once you do get that experience, you really get the feel for it and realise what an elegant method this is. It can be a victim of its own success at times, in that it allows you to level down to what are really quite crazily low actions. So the action on this now, when Gail gets it back, will be very, very low. That's great for how light it will feel to play and how easy it is to play. But the downside, potential downside, is that because we're working with so tiny clearances, it means it's very susceptible to environmental changes, which can then rob you of that clearance, and you could be, you know, finding yourself with buzz if the humidity changes or the temperature changes, or you send it to another country or whatever. So you know, there is that risk that the lower you go and the tighter the tolerance, or the tinier the clearances, I suppose you could say, you know, the more you're inviting the effects of environment and climate to sort of kick in and upset. And you know, once in a long while I will end up with somebody saying it worked perfectly when I got it, or on the video it sounds perfect but now it's buzzing. What's really important is for those high strings, the treble strings, have got to be able to bend across the frets. So I didn't really test that when I was doing the lower ones, because not many people will bend that far on the lower strings. But certainly when you're doing you're doing a low action like this, it's not just enough to make all the strings play cleanly, all the notes play cleanly. You've also got to make sure that the frets are level enough so that you can bend the high strings across quite a distance without them choking out. Now on a guitar like this with quite a flat radius, it's not that hard to do, relatively speaking. On a guitar with a tighter, rounder radius, more vintage style, like a 7.25 Fender or something like that, one of the old Mustangs or Music Makers or something, it can be very, very difficult to get a low action and retain the ability to bend notes without them choking out. And it's just something I learned the hard way by struggling to get what I expected to get as a low action on several very old guitars. There's a really high cluster of frets here. They haven't been seated properly at the end, so they're left standing up. I don't know if it's because this may have been fretted after the neck was put on and glued. Great, I'm happy with that. So I can see quite a bit of flattening here. So there's a cluster of high frets right here, this area here. There's a couple right here. Evens out a bit over here, and there's a little pile of frets that aren't seated properly at the end here as well. So maybe there's a pressing problem around here, which sometimes can be the limitations of trying to fret an already glued neck. Now I'm not saying that's what happened here, but you know, my sort of spidey detective senses suggest, well, that might be why this is the way it is, because it may be that they've done that. Again, I can't conclusively say that. It wouldn't make sense. I would imagine you would fret the neck and then you know, glue it together. Well, that's what I'm doing with a couple of guitars I'm making, but hey, I'm not a factory, so maybe they do it the other way. in which case it's kind of could be a telltale sign that it's quite difficult to get. You certainly can't get that into a press. You can get up to about here into the fret press. So if you're doing this once the body and neck are joined, you then have to start using clamps and different things or hammers or whatever, but you can't use a fret press to get to here. So it's quite a challenge. Okay, so what I've got now is we've got the action set down here, pretty much okay. What I don't know at this stage, I'm not going to do until we get a bit further away, is I don't know if the intonation is correct or not, but I'll leave that till we put new strings on. It would be easier to do it now, but it's not quite as accurate because these strings may behave differently to the new ones. So what needs to happen now is we need to take these strings off, block off the tremolo, stop it kind of clanging back, take these strings off, throw them away, clean everything, clean the reshape this if necessary. I'm not even sure it needs it. Might just kind of clean it through with sandpaper because the file's left a bit of smudge and looks a bit ugly. But then the most important thing is to re-profile the frets, which is to take off any of these flat spots and turn them from flat to more rounded shape to make sure they play nicely, and then polish them out, which is a boring process with sandpaper and micromesh sanding sheets. But it's all good stuff and it's got to be done. Now within that, while we're kind of at it, what we can do is change out this capacitor as well and try out this different sized one, or different rating one. See if it improves the tonal range or changes much that Gail will even notice. Now what I've noticed here is that the tremolo has moved back. And maybe because I don't know if the tuning's exactly right just yet, but the tremolo has, well, we're lower, so it's reduced its range of action backwards, so we may have to reset this. So because the overall action's been set lower on the posts, we may find that to get the range of action we may have to kick the back of the tremolo up, but we can do that as a sort of fairly last thing in the sequence. God, there's bits of broken off nut. Bits of gold nut everywhere. Sounds like a Austin Powers thing. Okay, so I'm not going to bother showing you because you won't be able to see in here when I replace the, but I'm going to put in a nice genuine Charles Guitars department of orange drop 0.1 capacitor. Actually this is a 0.15, isn't it? Yeah, 0.015. So it's lets more treble through than the conventional 0.22, so we should hear a bit more of treble response. I quite like that personally because it gives me more to play with. I would rather have more treble coming out of my humbucker output and then dial it off with the. I'd much rather use the tone more fully than to just leave it wide open and never use it. So for me, having more treble coming through is a better thing. Okay, so what I'll do now is, with that blocked off, I'll now take off the old strings, and they were pretty new a minute ago, but now they're kind of sacrificial. They're all tied round here. When I was talking to Gail when she was over, she came down from North Devon to bring this, and when I was speaking to her, one of the things I realised is that I'm like everyone else. I'm completely remiss in not making left-handed guitars. So I vow now, brown cow, I vow now that my next build guitar, my speculative build, let's say, is going to be a left-hander, because not just because there are left-handers to buy guitars out there, it's actually because the market is just unfairly skewed towards right-handers. In other words, there's just, I keep hearing there's just almost no choice for left-handers. So I think I'm a bit crazy. What have I just done? That's pressed on there, but okay, whatever. Yeah, I'm just mad if I don't avail myself of that and provide some left-handed nice homemade guitars. Anyway, okay, so look, I'm going to mark up the frets again for this part of the thing, and I'm going to use the trusty StewMac thingy, reprofiling. They call it a crowning file, I guess, but I call it a reprofiling file. And I'm going to use that, and it's sort of medium jumbo, so I'll use that side of it. And then the idea is just run it down, and I'm using it to round off the sharp edges of the fret whilst leaving a thin black line, if I can, along the top of the fret. And that little thin black line tells me that I am leaving the top of the fret untouched, and if I leave the very top of the fret untouched, I can be completely confident that I haven't lowered the fret in any way. I've reshaped it, but I haven't lowered it. I haven't adjusted its height. And that's pretty critical, since we've just spent time precision leveling the frets with that method. So it's all looking quite good. The frets were a little flat to begin with, so this is probably doing them a favour as well. On top of the flattening that I've just done on it, we're also tidying up historic wear as well, by the looks of it. But it's pretty good, working through pretty quickly, and the line down the middle of these frets is consistent. Now I've come across, you'll see when I come across ones that are a little bit flatter, have more material taken off, it'll take a little bit longer to kind of cut them into that thin line down the middle. And that often happens. You slip. I expect to find some, I have to work a bit harder down this end, and also particularly on the edges, I think, as well. Okay, there's quite a flat spot on there, that has to be worked on a bit more. I hate when that happens. Pressing down and you miss, and you lunge forward. Okay, so this is you can tell now I've got a couple of ones that are flattened on the end, so there's a bit of hard work to get them as re-profiled as possible. It's not entirely possible to totally reshape them, because sometimes they're so flattened at the end that you have to live with that bit. Now this one's got a flat spot in the middle now, which we'll do our best to eke out. There we go. Running towards the end. So changing the capacitor would be a simple business. You just literally unhook the old one and replace it. If I don't think it makes a nice difference, I will replace it with another orange drop of a 2.2 rating, which I've got some of here. In fact, I bought them in Chinese, shipped them from, in bulk, bought them in bulk on the slow boat from China, and tried them out actually not long back, and was very pleased to see that they worked. Okay, let's just let's pull these strings out. I also had a little sneaky idea the other day that I thought to myself, you know what, I had a Brian May Red Special for a short while, but I sold it because I wasn't really playing it that much, and I needed the money anyway. But I've since decided I think I would like to make my own. I think that they step up, because I think I'd have to make the neck to get the neck the same profile as his. I don't know if you can. You can probably buy a kit, but I don't want to really do that. I want to use my own skill and judgment. Anyway, so that's my thought. I thought I might have a go at making one of those. Now, while I'm here, let's see if I've got a replacement ring for this. I've got rings. I've got rings. Even get in to the cupboards. It's not very good. Not very good arrangement of things. There is a place for things, and things are in their places. Well, there's one that would work, but it's matte. And there's a metal one. Let's have a look. Typical, isn't it? The thin ones are all matte. Oh no, this is very low. So it is tapered, but it's very thin. No, don't think we're going to have one of these knocking about. Well, that's as bad as. Do you know what that would actually do? That would do. It's a little higher than it's intended to be, but there's no harm in that. Does it need to be a curved one, or is it? It's a flat profile. But that is. Is that curved? It is slightly curved. Damn. It needs to be flat. Thin and flat. Well, like I say, the only one I've got that would do the job, thin and flat, is this one, which is matte. That's what I think, anyway. There's another one. Buckled and buckled. There's a few more kicking around. Metal one. Perfectly nice and thin, but is it curved? Well, yes it is. Yes it is. That's much too flat, really. Right, well, that's it. Apart from, I don't know why I got that. No, I'm afraid we're going to have to use the same one, we'll keep the same one, which is technically broken, which is a shame. Because as I say, the only one that's feasible to replace it with is this one. And that looks odd because it's matte and the other one isn't. So I'm just going to leave it as it is, Gail. Sorry about that. It's not the end of the world, but if you come to change the pickups, then we can, at a later date, we can order in some new ones for that. Hey, see where we are time-wise. It's 7:30. Right, we've been going a while, so I'll probably take a break. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to flip it over, I'm going to go off camera, and I'm going to swap over the thingamay capacitor. Prop this up a little bit. Swap the capacitor. I probably will need to. I can't even see it. Help! I need some better eyes. It's in there. There it is. Yeah, no, I shouldn't have taken anything out. I just need to pull some wires to the side. So I'll replace that. Then I'm going to mask off the neck with masking tape. Then I will do the. Look at that. See, look, it sits in there. It doesn't come out. That's brilliant. I better take it out because it might fall out. Yeah, I'll do the polishing all the frets, and then I'll come back when it's time to re-string it. And then we'll worry about stretching out the strings, intonating it. Oh no, oh my god, that's not good. That's not how it's meant to be. Right, there's a little thing here we can start with. Oh god, there's got no fret dots, is it? Right, what we can do to help us on our way. This is not what I call a bridge I like, because like I said to you at the beginning, we now have to try and fit this, or try and intonate this, and these are loose. They're going to fall off or something. So we need the thing that's going to work to lock them in place, like that. And we actually probably need a better one, because those always strip it in the end because they're stupidly designed. So we need a best possible Allen key, not one of these little ones. Anyway. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start by placing them where I think they're going to be, and the way to do that is to go to the 12th fret from the nut, and let's stick that back in there just as a sort of prop for the ruler. But we'll give ourselves a sort of fighting chance to get close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12th fret, should be half its scale length. Oh crap, that wasn't supposed to happen. That one there, right, coming in at 31 mark. Okay, so 12 fret is there, and we come in, and we're coming in at 314. Okay, so it's a 628. Yeah, 628 scale length. Is that right? Yeah, 628. I'll just check it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 is there. Can't see it. Which finger am I using? 12 is there. Okay, prop that there. And it is, actually it's 313. But it could be pushed to 3, right, it was 313 really, so we know that, double that, it's 626, right? 626 is going to be the notional top E, which is down this end, top E position. What did we say? 626. So we want our saddle down at, blimey, 626. I'm not even sure I can get that much adjustment out of this. Ooh! That's weird. Let's just check something. Let's pull this out a minute. Sorry, this is taking more time than expected. Let's just lift this out. Can we place this somewhere else? Is there another hole? I think there is a second hole, isn't there? Yeah. Let's shove that in there. Come on, you can do it, can't you? Hey? There's 2 screw holes, but the second one is not lining up to be able to be used. I hate this bridge now. Did I tell you? What? Wow. Oh man, I hate this. Okay, so there's an adjuster back here, and that's how this works. I'm just going to push that back. Wow, that's actually going to push directly on the thread. Oh no, it's pushing on a little, it's pushing on the barrel-y bit. Okay, I'll let you off. I'll let you off. Okay. So the problem with this is we need to go forward, not back. And the problem with this is that we've got a hole that I'm trying to get this to bite into. We've got a little tiny washer we've got to keep on there. I'm trying to get this to purchase in this hole, and it's not lined up. Why? I don't know. And I have a feeling it's because this isn't put together quite right. Oh, oh my lordy. Okay. Hold on. Right. That's the nut. Fine, you stay down there wherever you fill. I can see it. I'll leave that for a minute. Right, let's just take care of something. First of all, let's get this out. Right, springs off. Unit out. Give this a clean anyway, so it's not such a bad thing. Right, I'm going to take this all apart because, oops, now I'm going to have to put this here. I'm going to take it all apart because I want to see why this doesn't line up. But there's not really much choice. Okay, let's put this here a minute. That's the E. What we're saying is we need this forward it's a shorter scale length. Now the feeling the blade edges, by the way, is they're pretty scratchy, certainly on this side. You know, they've taken some wear anyway. What I'm hoping to find out is whether I can slightly reposition this bridge in order to gain access to these screws here, and whether they allow me to access, have any movement at all to access this forward screw hole, because with this scale length we need to come a little forward. It's not really a problem with it. The bridge is pretty well made. It's maybe the problem with the positioning of the bridge. So I'm going to take a close look at this. Just putting these out in order so I know where they go. You can only pull back with these, you see. That's all it can do. That's funny, isn't it? Okay, so I'm looking at these, and the second holes in there, I'm going to take this all apart and I'll just check these second holes. The second holes in there appear, how have I cut myself? Appear to not quite line up, so they're not usable. Now I'm assuming they're there as usable holes, which in the way that they often are in these bridges, so that you've got two anchor points and you can get a bit of extra movement out of it. But I could be wrong about this. Well, I'm going to have a close look, and if I see a screw thread in here that fits those bolts, then I'll know that it's meant for a forward position, and then there's something wrong with the line-up of these two things which is preventing me to get into the front position. Because as it stands, if I can't move that bridge forward, I can't intonate this exactly. Okay, so we put these on here. Where's the screws go through there? 1 and 2, there are your anchor screws, there your string through the bridge. Okay, now that comes through the front, so it is only one position. Okay. Huh. Okay, alright, that's fine. It's not two, it's not like the Floyd Rose where there's two positions you can work off. There's one. There's one anchor point for each of the, or one thing for each of these things. Saddles, and you can pull backwards, but there's a limited amount of forward movement and we're already at it. Which means I don't think with this bridge we can quite get to intonate to the right scale length, which is 626. I think it really thinks it's 628, but it's actually measuring a 626. But it could be a fraction out. Okay, now the front one then. The front one is the string, well, they both all could go through there. String through is the front one. The one behind it is the anchor point, and there's our first anchor point. And we are going to try and make this go as far forward as we can get it, which we may be able to do it, we may not, we'll see. So go forwards with this, and then we can adjust this as far as we can go and get that extra bit forward. Okay, it's not quite as bad a design as I thought, which I'm pleased about. It has an adjuster in the back. I'm more complaining about the Tunematic versions, but a Tunematic kind of version of this one that I detest. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit this clean under here. A little bit of a wipe down, get the dust and crud away. Put that in there. Flip it over. Holding on carefully to everything. Get this the right way up. It's so hard to do. Thank you. 1, 2, stay on there. 2. Get in there. Thank you. Fit it in. Right. Okay. So No, I don't want. Where's my block? Where's my other block? Let's have that. Sorry about this. This is taking a trillion times longer than expected. Just want to be sure about the intonation position. Let's just crank that open for a minute. Oh, that's no good. What to do to keep it in place, roughly. Not terribly usefully. Okay, so let's just come backwards in time. Let's get the nut again. Where it threw itself onto the floor. Front end nut. What did we say? 626 on the treble end, and then it'll come away from that. Okay. Okay. We need to get forward, so still not far enough forward. So we have to, ain't going to be able to do it with this, am I? Let's try it with that. We're almost at the end of its travel anyway, so that's not. Is that doing anything? It is, isn't it? That's as far forward as it'll go. Test it one more time. Okay, it's about 627. Let's call it our start point. That's about as good as I can get it. Okay, which means we would technically lock this down at that point and work everything off there. So we know that this is the longest one in the series, and we know that everything works from that outwards. That was the idea, just to get a start point based on the nominal scale length, and then we can take everything from there. So that has to also be adjusted because that's not far enough forward yet. I could be wrong. Now, this doesn't really want to work in there. It's stiff. I have to lift that up and try. Okay, let's go with that. This is guesstimate. So the idea will be once we've got the strings on finally, we can use these backward pullers, and the trem will be canted up as well, so it'll be a bit easier. We can use these backward pullers. So we just about, with this thing adjusted all the way back, we just about got to intonate on here according to the scale length, but I'll be interested to see if the actual note setting, you know, using the tuner to set the intonation, if it tells us something other than what I've detected regarding the intonation here. So that looks about right. So this one can come forward, or the screw can do up until it sort of hits the thing. Can worry about that fine tuning a bit later. And then on the third one we step forward a chunk and then go back. So the idea is that the bass string has the longest intonation run of the lot, or the longest, yeah, the longest playing length of the lot. Okay, I'm relieved at how this works. I didn't know about those little adjuster screws in the back. I thought we were going to run out of space, but that was okay. Had to move it quite a way forward, assuming that the scale length is correct. There should be in two patterns of two groups of three. It didn't appear to be before, and judging by the marks on the bridge plate here, it wasn't set in two groups of three. It was a bit sort of in a line really, but we shall see how it plays out when we get the new strings on. It may still say that it wants to go back to that for all I know, but I'm just going with the sort of standard pattern really, the two groups of three, which tend to want to end up like that, assuming all things are as they never are, equal. I'm just sort of bringing these screws all up to connect. If I can, oh no, we don't want to be adjusting that. Calm down. Right. Let's leave that there. Okay, I'm going to now move on to the masking stuff and go off camera, and I'll see you when I'm restringing, and I'll do a little bit of a clean up as well on everything as we go. Check all these, make sure they're on, and I'll do the thingy capacitor. So I'll see you in a bit when that's done. Hello there, back. Okay, just a quick one. We've restrung, replaced the capacitor, and actually, interestingly enough, what I discovered in this one, which Gail you'll be interested in, you won't be able to see it here, but this is a 333 capacitor, so it's halfway between, you know, a standard one that you'd find in a Les Paul and one you'd find in a Strat, but it's in the wrong side of the thing typically for a Les Paul, so it will darken the sound of a Les Paul humbuckers, well, you know, humbuckers, sorry. It will darken the sound of humbuckers even more than you technically want it to. So I've taken that out, and rather than put a 0.015 in, I think that's too big a jump. I think the standard 0.22 would work, so I've put the 0.22 in there, an orange drop cap. So you will hear an increase in top end. So good spot. You're feeling about the tone being muddy, or you didn't say muddy, but you know, not a bit boomy or not very clear, is because that capacitor is too high a value really, typically for use with humbuckers. There you go. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm just stretching out the strings. I mentioned when you were over here about kind of how much it has to be stretched before I even put any tension on them to bring the tremolo plate up. Now what I might well do is I might stretch these out and get them up to pitch, and then leave it till tomorrow to set the floating tremolo, but I might check the intonation tonight. So I might set just the range of the tremolo, or check and set the range of the tremolo tomorrow. So I'll put some tension on. Now we're going to try and get to somewhere near pitch again with this fabulous crappy little tuner. See, I can't tell from there. I need a reference note. Okay. Come on. God, I hate this tuner. Close. Okay, so I tune it up to pitch once, and then I make it my business to stretch it all again, trying to keep as much of the stretching pressure off the anchor points, or the nut and the saddles. So kind of doing the stretch. Lots of different debates on this. All I know is that if you don't do this, your guitar will usually continue to go slightly out of tune for a lot longer than you'd expect it. So I don't see that this is a silly thing to do if you want a guitar that plays in tune from the outset. Come on, tuner. Come on, wake up. might have to do a tiny adjustment to that nut slot at the end there with extra big glasses on a little bit later. Okay, so we're getting towards getting it in tune, and it's sitting up. Obviously we need to reset that. Now this isn't going to be much of a help really on this tuner. I probably need the other one for this. God, this tuner is terrible. So it's pretty much spot on. I think I might have got the intonation right, but we need to do some more stretching. Okay, so I'm going to get off and disappear till tomorrow, daylight, probably, when I do the intonation and set the range of the tremolo. It's changed obviously because we've lowered the bridge on the posts in order to get a bit more, or get lower action out of it. We hadn't got any further action adjustment possible using the saddles on their own, so we have to lower the whole plate, which then changes the amount of available movement. If we want to re-establish that range of bend backwards, then what we need to do is to change the settings, change the setup of the tremolo so that it's basically starting from a little higher, slightly higher, won't be much, but a tiny bit higher position, giving us that full range back. But I think we'll worry about that tomorrow. Oh God, come on. Must get a battery for this stupid thing. D, G, D, what do you think it is? A? Oh, thank you. So very little change there, so we're getting most of the stretch out of there. At this point then I'll cut the excess off and I will get off and see you tomorrow. Things I'm doing tonight will be continuing, hopefully. It's not really going any further. I've got the humidity down to 79. I'm going to check in the tank of this thing and see if it's actually collected any water, or whether the humidity, apparent humidity drop is caused by something else, but I'll have a look at that in a minute. But ideally I want to get out there and later on metal, junk metal. Yeah, I want to be in a position to spray. Okay, put the back plate on as well. So yeah, turn up for the books, that 333 capacitor, which, yeah, maybe an odd choice, you might say, in a humbucker equipped guitar. Definitely darkens, will darken the sound down, because it removes more of the treble, which is why people use a 0.047 nano, no, was it microfarad or whatever, anyway, UF. 0.47 is typically used on Stratocasters because they start off with very trebly or high frequency pickups, so people tame those with a 0.047 and typically a 0.22, 0.022 with the humbucker. And some people like to put a different one on for each pickup, but that requires obviously having two tones. This has only got a master volume and a master tone, so we can't separate out the two. But it's a good spot because Gail recognised that there was something about this that was a little bit lacking in the higher frequencies, but we will have got those back with this 2.2 orange drop capacitor. Okay, I'm going to put this away. I'll hang it up for a minute, but put it away a little later, and I'll see you tomorrow for the tremolo setting. Okay, so just a quick alien catch-up. Finished the colour spraying on this baby here. I think that will do for now. Next stop, black headstock logo, followed by satin nitro over there. A couple of tests over here. Pitch pine with we've got on this side we've got white backing fading out. In here we've got solid red fading into transparent, solid white fading into transparent. In fact, they don't actually look too much different than me. That one looks a little darker, which is what I expected. Bunch of things put there. New donated thing there, and not too bad over there. Okay, we're back with, I said it was going to be daytime, but I lied. We're back with Gail's Tanglewood just for the last little bit here, and I'm just trying to waggle things around so we can see what's happening over here. That's falling apart. Why is that coming undone? Have I got to do something else over here? I probably have. Tighten that up. Right. Okay. So I've got out the tuner here. So to get the intonation sorted, I'm going to just tune each string at a time. Almost right. Okay, slightly sharp on at least two of those. So that means that's too sharp means too short. We need to come this way. So that's quite interesting. So I was right about these needing to move quite a way back. It's not far off actually. Actually, it's nearly on. That was probably a bit short, so that one needs to come back a tiny bit. So this is the tricky bit with all these. Let's just see how far the other ones are, if at all. Okay, G sharp. 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 Okay, so these three are sharp, which means they're too long. Sorry, too short. I need to bring these all back a bit. So, for my sins, I need to slack off this to allow me to move that. I'll get one of these out. It's going to totally mess up all of the tuning. I have to go through all of that again. So I need to undo these because the whole thing's got to move. And I'm going to take these three backwards if I can. Right, and that's the tricky bit. Now I may have to use this. Backwards. That means I have to tighten this up. Okay. Go to there. Go to there. Now this is the bit I don't like these systems for, because we're really guessing now at this point. Something like that, and maybe possibly something like that. And we'll take that one off as well, and take this one back. I think we'll be there then. Okay, line those up, do them back up. That's still in place, that's good. Do this one back up. So easy to strip these. If you don't use one of these, and if you use a tired key like some of those screwdriver shaped ones, which are handy in some situations, but if they get tired, which they'll want to do, then you start working with a rounded off key, and it will round off these little things in no time at all, and then suddenly you're unable to adjust. Right. So now we've got to try and get close. Right, just lifted those, got them roughly the pitch, then we'll go back through because we've got to do all of this together. Until it gets to equilibrium. Okay, so that's the, oh, let's check the intonation again. That was just getting it back into tune. Huh. Yep. Okay, I think the B and the G could do with going back a little bit. And we probably can do it with these things under the strings in tune, but we'll see. Just a little harder to do, but there's no reason. Same as with the Strat, you don't slack off the strings to do that. So just let's do it with this as is, and there we go. It'll just tune the thing up a little bit more, so that bringing these a bit closer together, and then ultimately the E back a little bit more. Okay. Now let's just have a quick look before I lock those down finally. Probably better just have that off there for a minute. It's a close, it's a close. Probably we need that again. We go back a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so what it's showing me is these are a lot less spaced, quite close together, so the differences between them are very small, which is fine, as long as they're in the same staggered pattern. So this one I'm going to pull back to there, and this one I'm going to go to there, which is about the same thing. And this one I'm going to go to there, a bit more. Pull that tune up beautifully. It's where it stops. Close. That might even come back a tiny bit, courtesy of this tremolo again. So pull that back a little bit, pull this back a fraction, pull that back a minute bit. There you go. That is good. I'm going to live with it like that. Now the next bit in this is the what's the next bit? Oh yeah, the tremolo height. Now this is a 2-point floating trem. Just treat it as a standard tremolo for the purpose of doing our old friend Galeazzo Frudua's method. And I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to get into too much discussion about it. I've explained it in other videos. I've got my instructions here. Come on. What I need is, stupidly, I forgot that in order to do this I'm going to need to take the screws off the back, because I need to do adjustments with the Tremolo Springs, which is a really nice aspect of this tremolo setup. So the reason I'm doing it is because presently, as expected, it's just a little bit short of the standard range of movement for the backwards, upwards, sharp pull. You normally want it set in such a way that simultaneously gives you, it's hard way of explaining it, but simultaneously gives you a semitone on the E, top E, a tone on the B, and a tone and a half on the G. And we do this by setting it up using these things in the back here, which is really quite an amazing system. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm just setting them all the way, or as far in as I can well, not some of the way, most of the way in, and I would expect to see that tip down towards the guitar. Now I need some, oh god, where's my post-it notes gone? Oh, hellfire. Got an old set, and I've got a better set under this messy pile of stuff. A little bit stuck together thanks to being used for resin work. Anyway, so what you do is you get this, and you get your eyeballs, and you basically push your tremolo forward until it's horizontal with the body, and you use as many post-it notes as it takes to make it horizontal, for example. Right, so that's that. Then you tune the G to G. Now this is obviously, I'm going to just give it a little bit of help because I'm currently dangling the neck, so it's a little bit artificial. Okay, so now we take the G and we do however many post-it notes are required to get the note down to E. E flat, too many. Flat, tiny bit flat, so let's take off one sheet of paper. One sheet of paper sharp. One sheet of paper. Dead on E. Then what you do is you tune everything to pitch. It might take a minute or two to balance it out. Okay, now that's tuned pitch. Now you let go of this and it'll go sharp. Amazing, this. Now what we do is we use the Watsits in the back here and we detune until the G becomes G again. Well, we detune, we loosen the tremolo claw until the G becomes G again. And then it will be in tune with the correct range tremolo claw, the tremolo action. I need the better screwdriver than this. Where's it gone? There. That one. So keep on tuning down until that G becomes a G again. G sharp. Brilliant system, this. Absolutely brilliant. Took me a while to kind of get my head around what it was doing. Nearly there. Slightly sharper G. One there. We're pretty much on. And maybe one on the other side there. There you go. That is us done. Now what we've got, I'll show you now how you can see, having changed the action, remember, and we knew that to get the full range before, because the action was higher, we had enough room to get the full range and it was already set to that. Having lowered the overall bridge action, we couldn't get the same range back, so in order to do it, that now has to be canted up just slightly above where it was. Okay, tilted up at the back. This will now give us the correct range of backward movement, courtesy of that funny little tuning thing we just did. So top E should go to F. B should go to C sharp. G to B flat. There you go. Okay, so that's all the business done. Now the one thing I just wanted to make sure, it's clearly working through here, but I just wanted to no, that's fine. I'll test it inside just to hear the difference in the pickups, but that's going to be really for Gail to fasten her ears on and determine that that's improved the tone a little bit. So back to here, having done the intonation and the tremolo setting using the fantastic Galeazzo Frudua method, which I heartily recommend you check out if you're ever needing to do it, because it's a really elegant system, so quick, and it makes sense once you get your head around it, but you have to think it through. So what, basically in short, what we're doing by playing with a detuning business, we're creating the room to begin with for the tremolo to bend backwards the amount of the range we need it to bend up, and we just start, and that's what all that sort of tuning and then depressing and putting the post-it notes business, and it's just a beautiful way of doing it. And so the post-it notes operation creates the room, the exact amount of room we need for the tremolo operation. Okay, so that's that done. Need a bit of polish down in the house. Done. Now this will have changed the action very slightly. May have changed the action very slightly because we've tilted up a little bit, and that does raise the action. So we'll just double check this. We don't have any more room available to us. Oh, I know what. Yeah, we do need to take it down a little tiny bit. This has now gone to 1.5 and just under 2, so we need to lose 0.5 millimeter, and this is where I'm going to upset all the purists in the house by taking this amount now down. We're going to go in by as much as it takes to reduce the action to exactly where we had it. Now there was a little bit extra in the tremolo bend a minute ago, and that's because we still had this extra space built in. So this now goes down to just over 1, and this goes down to 1.6. Got a tiny bit more to go. There and there, sort of by suck it and see. So we're going okay, good. We are done. There you go. Thanks for watching, and see you for the next one, which is going to be a Harley Benton SC single cut 450 upgraded. See you in a minute.